Okay, I wanted to just do a little video on the channel. I get asked occasionally, how do you get different parts of your motor compartment so clean? If you've seen my other videos, you've seen I have pictures of my truck in the videos and so forth, and you can see the engine compartment is in pretty good shape, but I put a lot of work into it, and you can see in the photos I've got here, this is what the motor compartment looked like when I first got my truck, and I was in the process of taking things apart and trying to get it cleaned up. People contact me from the channel, and generally the questions are, how did you get the valve cover so clean? How did you get the intake manifold so clean? What is the exact process you use? And so I kind of wanted to just touch on that in this video. So as you can see here, this is the truck when I first got it. This is the motor, the engine area after extensive cleaning. Specifically, I'm going to detail how I approached the valve cover, the upper intake plenum, which you can see right here, and then the runners, which are tucked in under here. And the way this kind of got started was when I was watching a YouTube video after I had recently got the truck. I happened to see, and I don't remember whose video this was, but I happened to see a guy restoring his 22 RE, and he panned across his valve cover, and you can see I've got a screenshot of it here. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, that looks really nice, Or maybe I found it in Google image search, I'm not sure. But I remember I came across this, excuse me, and I really liked the treatment that he did. And it's evident that he sanded this down and polished it and then painted this and then painted outside the edges. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's kind of how I want my motor to look one day. And so that kind of set me on the path of cleaning things. So you can kind of see I didn't paint around the outside, but I kind of did the same treatment. After working on my valve cover, cleaning it, doing a little bit of, I didn't use sandpaper as I recall. In this area, I believe this is just a scouring pad. But I spent many evenings cleaning this thing inside and out in the kitchen sink, using some Barkeeper's Friend, which I'll cover in a minute, because I also use that process on the intake runners and the plenum. So I'll show that in a little bit more detail. But you can see the basic approach I used for my valve cover here, and I've got some other pictures of it. So you can see I sprayed it with wrinkle finish paint, and then I used a little piece of sandpaper. I think it was 600 grit on a block of wood, and I knocked the paint down around on the top of those letters. So I was really pleased with how it turned out, and it kind of approximated what I had seen in that video. So, and then it wasn't too much longer till my LC Engineering aluminum oil filler cap showed up, and you can see my PCV stuff. I really like this cap. It's real well made. I will say that when the motor's hot, it's a little tricky to get that undone unless you've got a rag in your back pocket or something, because it gets as hot as the rest of the motor. But I really like the way it looks. At one point, I was going to sand this area down and paint it black to match this, but didn't end up doing that. And that's, if I remember correctly from my motor, yeah, I'm running it that way. So... and then if you've been watching the channel, you can see recently my buddy dropped his truck off, and I'm rebuilding some of the front end of the motor, doing the dual timing chain, and I had to pull the oil pan off. And I said, hey, I'll do the same treatment on your valve cover as I did on mine. So this is his valve cover here. Just pulled it off the motor, did some preliminary cleaning, getting ready to spray it. And you can see right here, this little stainless steel brush from the welding place is what I use primarily to clean the valve cover, and just a lot of elbow grease and a little bit of gasoline spraying and using this stainless steel brush. Gets the valve cover looking pretty decent. You don't really necessarily need to sand the valve cover. You can just abrade it with the bristles of the brush. So. And then in this little area here, I heated it up with a blowtorch to clean out any kind of residual, oils or liquids or anything, solvents in there. And then I got some this paint here, Wrinkle 8, very high temp Wrinkle Plus. It's a wrinkle finish paint that when you spray it on and it gets hot in the sun, it will give a real nice wrinkle finish, kind of the way Ferrari does with their valve covers and so forth. I think I've been using this stuff since the late 70s, early 80s. Really terrific paint. Pick it up on Amazon there. So then you can kind of see the basic approach here out in the sun. Get this thing heated up. And if you've never used this wrinkle finish, you kind of got to get the surface hot, and you need to be out in the sun. You probably want to practice on something other than your main part the first few times you spray this. You also kind of have to spray it a little bit on the thick side to get the wrinkle effect to happen. Like I say, it's best to just do kind of a few test practice jobs before you go straight to your motor. But you can see pretty thick in here, and it's wet. Leave it out in the sun. Sometimes you can even take a hairdryer and kind of accelerate things along. And then here's what you end up with. And it gives you this little wrinkly kind of appearance. And the paint's actually very durable. Once you heat cycle the motor, a bunch of times driving around, this paint actually bakes on there and is very resistant to oil or gasoline, which I like a lot. And then you can see there's kind of a close-up of the finished product. We got the wrinkle kind of deal going on here. And you can see over here, this is kind of the appearance of just using the stainless steel brush. Now on the one that I had for my motor, I think you can kind of see I probably did actually use a little sandpaper around here just to clean things up. Or it might have just been one of those 3M green scouring pads. So you kind of have to just fiddle around with it till you get it looking how you want. But in any event, you can see how the wrinkle finish looks, and then this picture here shows after knocking it down with a little bit of wet sanding and some 600 grit. So I was pretty pleased with how this turned out for my buddy for his motor. Now on back to my truck, I also did the intake plenum and the runners, and the way I do these is I use as you can see, I soak them. So, got to clean them with some degreaser and then get a wire, not a wire brush, but a toothbrush. I usually keep a supply of old toothbrushes around. And then get in these little kind of nooks and crannies. The other thing I've mentioned a few times, like around where the fuel injectors mount and little areas like this, it can be really hard to get the years of dirt in those areas out. And so what works really well for cleaning and scaling around these little areas is actually a bamboo chopstick. And the ones from Panda Express, I think, are the ones that I use. I can't remember for sure, but usually if you go to a real good sushi place, they'll have these chopsticks which are made out of bamboo, and they're only attached at the little back end of the chopsticks. The ones that are all the way down and feel more like they're made out of pine as opposed to bamboo, those are kind of worthless. But if you get the bamboo ones, you can really go to town cleaning parts like this in the sink. And you can kind of see here, I've cleaned the inside using a little bristle brush, and then you can kind of see also what I've got here is I've got a residue, kind of liquid residue all over. And what that is it's barkeeper's friend. And this is a kind of a household cleaner you can get at most stores. It's only a couple bucks. But the thing about it is it has an acid in it. Now, you do have to be careful, because if you say let me see if I can find a picture. Say you used it on a part like over here. See how that's got cadmium plating on it, or some kind of plating? The barkeeper's friend will actually etch that right off, especially, say, for example, these kind of clamps that are coated or anything. If you get the barkeeper's friend on that, it'll etch it right down to the raw metal. So you got to be careful with it. But for aluminum, it does a real nice etching routine, and you get kind of a bright finish. So what I do sometimes is I mix up a solution of barkeeper's friend in the sink and soak these aluminum parts overnight a couple times in a row, and that will really get down back to kind of the aluminum. And then sometimes I just make almost like a paste, as you see, and let it soak for a few hours or half a day kind of thing. And then just a lot of scrubbing, and eventually you get things clean. Now, I also did the upper plenum. I don't have photos of it in the sink, but I did the same routine. And then you can see here what I did was I block sanded this whole flat upper part in that's aluminum, along with the letters, to get kind of a nice shiny surface up there. And then I took, to get kind of this satin finish, because originally when I sanded it, it was almost getting shiny, polished looking. But I wanted it to drop it back down to a matte finish. So I took a green, I think it was a green 3M scouring pad, and then just dragged it across in a straight line to make these consistent kind of scuff marks. And that works real well. I actually use that trick when I'm restoring stainless steel veneer calipers. Actually, it produces a kind of that factory satin finish. So I use that same trick here on the letters and on the upper part of the intake plenum, and then just went to town masking it off and painting with the wrinkle finish paint, leaving it out in the sun so it would get a good little wrinkle on it. And then just block sand this again and give it that little scuff, and you can get some pretty nice results. Here's another photo showing the whole plenum kind of in my living room. There's kind of the finished product after many hours of work and this reassembly and everything. And you can see, like on these little areas here, with the corrosion, nothing you do is going to really get that out short of sanding or machining. But I think on that part I might have actually put JB Weld in there or something to fill those in, just so they didn't leak. But you can see it looks pretty nice, especially when kind of you take the whole kind of thing and bolt it to the motor. You get a pretty nice looking kind of a deal right there. And of course, it's a huge improvement over kind of what comes in your typical 22RE. So for those people who email occasionally or post on the channel, how the heck do you get these things so clean? Really, it's just a lot of scrubbing and soaking it in the barkeeper's friend. Really goes a long way to etching, kind of getting that factory look. So that's kind of the big trick. And then when it comes to the kind of how I approach the finish is just mask it off, as I showed kind of right there. Mask it off, let the paint dry, and then go to town with some sandpaper, and a little bit of cleaning goes a long way on some of these parts. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover here as far as how to clean up some of these aluminum parts, make them look a little bit nicer, easier to deal with. I'll tell you firsthand, it's a lot nicer to work on and maintain a motor that's real clean like this, as opposed to something that's got a lot of grease and grime on it. Although my motor, after this picture here, is after power washing the motor a few times, but it was actually a pretty good starting point. My buddy's truck, as you see, is quite a bit more dirty, but it's still, you can see, still just wire brush, a little bit of gasoline, some paper towels, and away you go. So, all right, well, hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the section below there. I try to answer everything, and should have some more videos coming on the channel pretty soon. please consider subscribing as it helps the channel. And I've got some more videos coming up pretty soon. Specifically, for those interested, I've got a video coming up talking about this little adjustment right here, which is the kind of the idle adjustment screw for the airflow meter on the 22RE. And I've been doing some diagnostic and testing, and I think I've got some good information coming up on that. So definitely stay tuned for that. And thanks very much for watching.